Well, as the Senate prepares to vote on extending the Bush-era tax cuts, there are new questions, I should say, about the real impact this would have on millions of Americans. Here to break it down and talk facts and fiction, Neil Bork, KD Radio talk show host and attorney, and Simon Rosenberg, president of NDN, which is a left-leaning think tank. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here.
Sure.
Let me start with you, Neil, because
Sure.
Now the Democrats have passed this in the House, saying we're just going to extend it for the middle class, not for the so-called rich. It's not going to pass in the Senate. Many people say it was an exercise in futility. It was basically a waste of time, because it's clear that's not going anywhere in the Senate. And so the point you arrive at in watching this theater on Capitol Hill is what?
Well, the point, it wasn't an exercise in futility. They had a definite goal in mind, and that goal was to, before they lose power in the House, to make one more massive play at the class warfare card. And that is, let's try to create this idea, this image that these horrible, disgusting Republicans are just for rich people and nobody else, and we'll do it by running this bill in there that has no chance of ever becoming law and putting them in a position where they have to vote against it. There is, given time, there is no rational argument anywhere for increasing taxes on the jobs producers in this country right now when our economy is fighting so hard to recover.
You know, that's the argument that you continue to hear from the right, Simon, that you just don't raise taxes in the middle of a recession, and the Democrats just fundamentally disagree with that when it comes to the wealthy.
I think so. I think what the House did yesterday was vote to cut the taxes of all Americans, and what the Senate Democrats may do tomorrow is the same thing. And I'm a little surprised the Republicans actually voted against a tax cut that affects all taxpayers in the country, because they're angry that people making over $250,000 may get a small marginal tax increase. I mean, we're talking about going back to the rates that existed in the 1990s when we saw the greatest economic boom in American history. Certainly, those tax rates didn't prevent the largest economic boom in American history, median income from going up, deficits going to surpluses.
They keep coming back and saying we're in a recession.
It's hard to believe why that would happen now. I just don't understand why fundamentally things have changed so much that would now somehow disrupt the way that the economy is going today.
Neil, they keep coming back and saying, A, we're in a recession, and then they say, B, just philosophically, they don't believe with this sort of soak the rich mentality. They don't think that's the way to go.
Well, look, let's just replay the last minute and a half, or the last minute. What they did was vote for a tax cut for all Americans, and the Republicans are upset because of it will have a tax increase for those earning over $250,000 a year, which, by the way, are America's small business jobs creators. How in the world do you go on TV and say this was a tax cut for all Americans, and then say, and by the way, people are upset because it increases taxes on people who make over $250,000 a year? You got to decide, sir, is this a tax cut for all Americans, or is it a tax increase on the jobs producers out there?
No, it would be if the higher-end tax cuts were allowed to expire and return back to rates that already exist in the 1990s when there was a huge economic boom. So clearly it did not prohibit the greatest economic boom in American history. We already tried this, and it worked, Neil, right? Is that if what we're talking about is 2%?
No.
It worked fine, Neil. I mean, we already tried this. This is not a hypothetical experiment. We had these tax rates. We saw the largest economic boom in American history. Median income went for everybody, surplus, deficits to surpluses. So the point is, now what the Democrats are saying is that prudently, if we let these tax cuts go back, if we let the rates go back to the old rates, right, we will pay down the deficit and do something that will give a tax cut to all Americans. I think this is smart economic policy.
You will not.
Twice as many Americans agree with this than your plan, right, in polling, and I think it's the right to do, and I think the Democrats are standing on principle on this.
Okay, look. My esteemed colleague here knows full well that raising taxes will not pay down the deficit. He knows that the Kennedy tax cuts, the Eisenhower tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts, the Reagan tax cuts, that all of them resulted in increased revenue to the government because people, when you reward them for hard work,
Neil, that's just not true. It's just that's a complete falsehood, Neil.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant when I said, given the time.
I want to
Given the
finish with
time,
this.
I could
I want
have
to
you
finish with the
whimpering
latest.
and crawling out of the studio.
Because what they're now saying on Capitol Hill is that the president is now saying he's definitely opposed to two things: raising the taxes on the middle class and extending the tax cuts for everyone permanently. So they're saying what's going to happen is there's probably going to be an extension for everyone on a couple of years basis. We'll see whether that pans out.
That is
Neil and Simon,
absolutely what is going to happen.
thank you both so much.
Let's see.
Well, she
Thanks,
is one of the
everybody.
top cross-country runners in California.